I'm Helen Sue Kemp. I'm a wiregrass master gardener, and we are here at the DABG, which is Dothan Area Botanical Gardens demonstration garden. I've been working here since 2002, and I have taken care of all of the plants essentially myself with a few helpers. The gardens actually started in 1998, but the only thing they really produced first was a 100-pound pumpkin. From then on, they started making rows of different plants, and it was really, really difficult. By 2003, we were just inundated with weeds, and it was very, very hard. So about 2004, I decided to start partitioning off different areas of the garden so that we would have some square beds and some rectangular beds. We had some triangles, something to give it a little bit more interest, for one thing. And they were only just landscape timbers. We used conveyor belts between the different rows of plants. That was successful, except when it rained, they curled up and then they dried funny, and it really was kind of dangerous. But it did help with some of the weeding. So my big problem was weeds more than anything. I'd start at one end, get to the other end, and the first end would be just full of them again. The area here is about 100 feet by 40 feet. So that gives you about 4,000 square feet to plant in. After I started all of that, I worked for several years planting, trying all different types of vegetables, and it really has been a wonderful experience. The vegetables go to the Wiregrass Area Food Bank, and we have done up to as much as 2,400 pounds a year, but with the changes that we've made, we've actually lowered the amount of produce that we've been able to produce. First of all, when you take in some lettuce and it only weighs a pound, but the bag is huge, versus a small bag of potatoes that might weigh 20 pounds, poundage is really difficult to go by. But it feeds people, and that's what's important. There are certain vegetables I'd rather not plant, so I don't plant them. It's very, very time consuming to take care of a garden of this size. At any rate, in 2015, I finally had just about had it. I went into the board directors and I said, I can't do it anymore unless you change it. So we decided to change to raised beds, and I've been a very happy soul ever since. It's so much easier. It's amazing how different the weeding is. That's probably the biggest difference, except on the ground, you know, on the floor part. But the actual beds themselves, you can't beat it. It's nothing better than that. One of the negatives with the wood beds is that the wasps like to form their little nests and hang on the thing. So there's nothing worse than approaching a bed and standing there and suddenly zap, they get you at the back of your knee, because that's right about the level at where they are. And they are horrible. So they have to be checked all the time. The brick ones that we have, though, don't seem to have that problem. There's some negatives with bricks, but I like them a lot. They're smaller. The wooden ones that we do have are two different types. One of them has corrugated metals on the sides, and those are fine. They do not have a lip, though, to sit on, whereas the other ones, which are solely wood, have a shelf built onto the top of them, and that's nice to be able to sit down and do a little weeding on the sides, particularly for an elderly person such as I. The brick beds, I don't have a problem with any of them, except they're smaller, so therefore your production is less. Now, as for irrigation, what we have tried here, we first started out with tubing all around through the bed. It was not really successful. It just did not seem to water enough. You had to be running for a long time. So we changed things, and what we formed was a long tube down the center with smaller tubing going to strategic parts, the corners and in the center. So the four corners actually have emitters, which are 90-degree emitters, and they sprinkle up. And then the center ones are 180 degrees. So therefore it gets a good balance. You don't need to have them too long. We probably run them when it's really, really hot for about 15 minutes in a day, simply because of the heat and the fact that being a raised bed, they will dry out faster than something that would be in the ground. However, that's great. We put mulch on the top of the beds. That helps protect some of the moisture. And we have not had a lot of problems. I've really been successful with just about everything except tomatoes, and that's a Mother Nature deal in which she's getting too hot at the wrong time for the tomato. However, I love to grow carrots. Potatoes do well. These nice carrots right here, and a lot of other different vegetables. Peppers do beautifully well. I've done peas, I've done all different types, Swiss chard, kale, and nothing seems to really die. I don't seem to have a bad problem with that. About August, you start getting an awful lot of bugs, but that's just Mother Nature here working. Now, as for the beds, I plant pretty much 1 or 2 types of vegetable per bed, and I like to incorporate some flowers. Actually, I've got some running beans going up some trellises and things like that. It does help to incorporate different things in your garden. It makes it visually far nicer. The other disadvantage with wooden ones versus the brick is that soil does start to escape between the areas where the 2 boards perhaps were together. So you do have to constantly add soil. You have to change the soil some. For the most part, it is a matter of just keeping track of it and watching it. There are times that I like the soil to be a little bit lower. For instance, if you're growing lettuce in the cooler times, which is when it grows best here, you can then cover it easily if it's lower down. And in the cold days, when we do have a few of them that are really cold, the cover sheets will protect it. So there's advantages to having it low and advantages to having it up high. So you have to think about what you're growing. That's important. We have flooring in this particular garden that I'm not crazy about. It's small little pebbles, little tiny rocks. And the biggest disadvantage is the children pick them up and then throw them in the beds or throw them at each other. So that's not good in a public garden. In a private garden, it might be fine. They're a little bit harder to walk on at times. It can be, your back can get tired from it, or your legs. I do not know the perfect solution. Perhaps if it was grass and just mowed, might even be better. And edged. That's a lot of edging on a lot of beds, but you might be able to figure out something that you could put next to it to keep it from the weeds going up. But to mow it, I think would have been a better solution in this instance. This bed is not completely planted yet. This half of it I'm going to be putting in cucumber seed and letting that. I'll have a rack so that they can climb on it. This other half, though, I'm devoting to tomatoes. And one thing that's really important is if you particularly have different varieties of tomatoes and you want to keep track of them, a good label is important. We use blinds and mark them. You can use all kinds of different things. Wood tends to deteriorate, so it's better to use something that is not going to deteriorate. When we originally started with these beds, we started with about 2 feet or 1.5 feet of sand. Just normal sand. And then we started to put organic material into it. I found that it wasn't quite the right mixture. And I did a soil sample for particular beds that I wanted to grow tomatoes. I sent it off, they told me what to add. I added it, and boom, I had a bunch of wonderful tomatoes that next year. It was really a positive thing to do, very positive. It's difficult when you have lots of beds, because then you have other things that have different types of requirements. In general, a pretty basic one is what's necessary, a basic fertilizer. And you need, for tomatoes, of course, you've got to have something that has some calcium in it and magnesium so that they can avoid some of the problems that tomatoes do have.
One thing we always try to do is include a little testimonial where someone has actually done what we're talking about. So in this time of self-isolation, we have decided we were going to do some raised beds at our house this year. And rather than spend a bunch of money, we're working with what we already had. We had these two rusted out cattle troughs and a couple of rusted out and we had a couple of rusted out buckets and wash tubs, and then we just added to it with a couple of plastic containers. So I'll get Sydney over here to tell you what we did and how we did it and how he set our irrigation up. And I'm excited about this irrigation. No more hose dragging. Go ahead.
All right, well, what we did, I had two mineral tubs, and I put some brick down in the bottom of them that had holes in them. Then I put some straw in the bottom as a filler in all of these. And then I filled them up about halfway with the straw, and then we got our dirt from Stan at DJ's Nursery, and put probably about a foot, 12 inches of soil on top. Of course, it rained yesterday and packed it down. Anyway, then I got the irrigation. I got it hooked up and got it running on them. And I got it on. I hooked it up, buried the pipe in the ground, and come up here at this tank here. And then I got it set on a timer that it'll run about 20 minutes right now, and we can set it for ever how long we need to.
Okay, show we have a little L-shaped setup. So he did.
Well, right here I teed off. She had these over here, so I just teed off the pipe here, run another piece of pipe, and then put the emitters. We haven't got this one planted yet, but we'll put them wherever we need them. But it's real easy to do, real simple.
Well, we've taken you from the simplest of beds all the way up to this Cadillac of raised beds that Mr. James Currington, Randy Currington, and Mr. Victor Kahn built earlier this spring on the Vivian B. Adams School site. We will be able to bring you more on those and the how-to of especially doing this great tunnel house type bed later. But I really want to express my gratitude to all of our presenters, to Mr. James Currington, to David Kuhn, Lucy Edwards, everyone that worked together, Stan West, Ms. Kemp, everyone that worked together to bring this information to you. At the end, we will have a list of their emails right here. And if you have specific questions for these presenters, I know they'll be happy to answer your questions. We will have more to come. Hopefully our next meeting, whether it be in person or by video, and sounds like most likely by video, we're going to talk about the actual planting of our beds. One of the things we do have available is a calendar. Many of you at our meeting saw this earlier and were able to get a copy. This has been written expressly for our area. It shows the different planting dates, what you need to plant, and gives you a place to write information so you can keep up with what you're doing. And if you are interested in one of these calendars at no cost to you, if you will email me, Susan Owens, my email will be listed at the end of the presentation. I will get one to you as quickly as I can. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch later.
Hi, I'm James Curtin with the Natural Resource Conservation Service ACES program. The Natural Resource Conservation Service is an agency created through USDA to assist farmers, ranchers, and growers with conservation activity on their land and property. The ACES program was created to assist Natural Resource Conservation Service with delivery of their programs and activities through older workers' career centers. The Natural Resource Conservation Service provides funding and assistance to assist landowners with conservation activities such as fencing, cross fencing, watering trough, livestock, anything to do with livestock. Also, they provide funding to do with small growers on activities such as tunnel houses, garden, community type garden, and they also provide funding. They also help large growers with conservation practice such as cotton, corn, and peanut. With the William B. Adams School to discuss and talk about different aspects of what NRCS does. We also provide education, training to also help producers become more familiar and more productive in the way that they carry on their business. And whether you're just getting started up or you've been farming for the last 20 years, we try to assist you and make your operation better